just before the rebel army took over the town, there was an order by the national government, by the central government, given to all the towns and cities in Spain which were still loyal to the Republic to neutralize those elements, those citizens, which could eventually help a takeover by the rebel army from inside. So there was in Mollina approximately 15 people who were thought could be of help to the invading army. And so therefore, the town hall brought them into this building here in the center of town. There was no school during these days, obviously. And they were kept here from the 6th of August, that is to say 2 weeks after the coup had started, failed, and then it became a war properly. They were kept here from the 6th of August until the 12th of August, which is when the army, rebel army coming from Sevilla all the way sweeping through towards Granada and Malaga came across here. So these people were kept, they were looked after very well. In fact, there were trade unionists from Malaga who came to get them, to kill them in Malaga, and they were protected by the local people who had been their servants and still would be in the future because they were the wealthiest people in town. Everybody was working for them. In these days, 1936, there were about 5 or 6 families who owned 95% of the land around here. Today, things are different. Almost everybody owns a little plot of land. But in these days, there were very few families who owned everything. So everybody in town, and there were about the same amount of people as today, about 5,000, everybody in town was dependent on these 5 or 6 families, really. So these people were kept here, and although there was much hate towards them because of the way they had been treating their miners, the workers, still the workers had a conscience, and these people were not hurt at all. In fact, they were kept here, even though the people who came from Malaga with guns and lorries and so on, we want to take all the fascists to Malaga and kill them and so on. They said, no, they are not fascists, they have done nothing wrong, we are responsible for their upkeep. They're not going to be left alone, they're not going to leave the town, we look after them. So that happens, and comes the 12th of August when the army came early morning, probably about 10 o'clock, 10:30, starting from La Roda de Andalucía, which is about 14 miles to the west. They started there in the morning, took over Fuente Piedra, which is what the Flamingo Lake, within very short time. It was a very quick takeover because there was no resistance in Fuente Piedra. The army moved in, they shot everybody who had been related to politics until yesterday, till the day before. Trade unionists, the mayor, anybody who had voted and was known voted for the Republican Party, they were shot within a couple of minutes or 3 in the main square, shot, and the city hall then was constituted by the rich people again. They were then in command. The army left a few soldiers there to look after peace for the time being, and then they moved on to Humilladero, which is 4 kilometers from here, and then they moved into Mollina. Now, they knew that there was resistance, there was going to be resistance in Mollina, because they had been informed, obviously, by telephone. There were approximately anything between 50 and 200 people. We don't know how many, probably more than 200. But between 50 and 200 people were prepared to face the army. And, well, they were badly armed. They had pistols and shooting guns and so on. The army was a proper army with airplanes, with tanks, with proper disciplined soldiers and so on. A column of approximately 500 soldiers. And so when the army just came from Humilladero, faced the resistance in the outskirts of the town, the resistance very soon realized that they had no chance. So they sort of scattered around the town, around the east, the west and the northern part of the town, and the army followed them. Then the army invaded the town from the street you have come through, approximately, and landed in the center of the square. By that time, some of the resistance people had been, they were not soldiers, they were people just like you and me, Some were young, some were old, some were very old. I don't know of any women who was in them, but they were normal people. So by the time the army surrounded the town completely, some had managed to escape, and some others had not managed to escape. They had gone back home. And obviously they were denounced by the people who were pro-rebel. They were denounced. So-and-so went out this morning to face the army and so on. So all men between 15 and any age thereafter were surrounded and sent to the main square. In the main square, when things were pacified within an hour or so, the general who had been waiting outside the town came in, moved in. Everybody was receiving him with palmas and very happy with white flags and Spanish flags and so on and so forth. Obviously those who were pro-rebels. And he landed in the main square, eventually sat down, they brought in a chair, and he said, now who is who here? You were shot. And who else? Within about 10 minutes, 7 people were shot in the main square in front of everybody. They were normal people who had wanted the Republic to continue, had fought for the Republic, and eventually gave their lives. Most of them had been able to escape and made their way into Malaga, which was still in the hands of the Republic. I was saying earlier on that today the attitude we had, I was already 30-something when the transition took place. I was a responsible, relatively well-educated person. I had traveled, and so were many of my compatriots. And we are now being accused of having been too indulgent to the Franco side after Franco died. Why did you let go? Why did you not take revenge, in other words? That the situation was so difficult that we thought, without an agreement, actually, everybody acted on its own initiative. But we knew that the right thing to do was to keep quiet, not to talk about it, not to bring back the past and start fighting, perhaps, again with a very powerful army, and so on and so forth. So silence was kept for about 25 years. Nobody would mention anything about the war. Franco, yes, one could criticize Franco, not too much perhaps, but because the system was still Franquista, and so everything was Franco still, and you didn't want to create any problems. We wanted a smooth transition, and the transition was a wonderful transition. Nobody was killed. If you think of a 40-year-old military dictatorship, a transition to a democracy without anybody being even hurt.
Yes, amazing.
I think that was a tremendous achievement. Today we're being criticized by the younger generation. Why did you not do this? Why did you not do that? And it is almost impossible, it seems, to make these young people understand what the situation was. It's almost impossible to bring to their minds what a difficult, terrible time we had had. When the book was written, and the elderly, those who were already 80 and over, said, you must write something about what happened in Mollina. You don't mention that in your book. In fact, I was very much criticized for not for what I wrote, but what I did not write about. So and I said, no, it's too painful, too difficult. I don't want to. No. So some insisted, and they thought, you are capable of writing that. You have written 2 excellent books, and the account is. So anyway, I lent myself to that. I had a lot of information, and then it took me about 5 years or 6 to talk to all these people and to make a fichero, to make an agenda of what had happened. My father, by that time, he had died. But some of these people, the last one I know of, died last year. He was a very close friend of my father and of myself. We lived together, almost together, for the last 3 or 4 years of his life. And well, eventually I wrote the book, and the book seems to be very well balanced. I'm not I'm pro the weak, but nothing more. I'm not nationalist or pro-Republican, and I seem to have criticized also the Republicans. Now the fashion is not to criticize the Republic. The Republic did a lot of wrong things. And if you talk bad about the Republic, you are a bad guy now, because the Republic was everything and Franco was the worst. Well, indeed, he was, and so was his system. I cannot argue that. To argue against that is madness. But you have to criticize also what was done wrong by the Republicans. And that did not go very well with the people in the village, with some people in the village. The extreme thinking people, the radical ones. And yes, I've lost a couple of friends, but I'm not very concerned. I don't think they ever were my friends.
They won't be getting a Christmas card.